We're seeing the right explore this territory. Perhaps it's now permissible to say stuff that the papers would tell you off for. Perhaps it is now time to see how far we can go in ethno-nationalism.
Let's talk about Reform's policy on social housing and why that is potentially a new line in British politics.
Well, Reform's policies, I think, are worth taking very seriously. Nigel Farage is still pretty much the man most likely to be Prime Minister at the next election. I mean, Kemi Badenoch sometimes goes in front of him. But, what they say deserves to be taken really seriously, no matter where they are in the opinion polls. And a new fault line has opened up now. Previously, they were focused on immigration, and this was a very popular cause. If you look at the Conservatives, one of the main reasons they lost the last election was because they promised to control the borders and then they didn't. You had the so-called Boris wave of immigration almost hitting net 1 million. But what you've had since then is Shabana Mahmood making a really good fist at controlling these numbers. Immigration is down 60-70% from the peak. If you look at the national insurance registrations, it's something like a 20-year low. Take away the pandemic, and we haven't seen it so low for a long time. So you can see Nigel Farage looking into the future thinking, well, I can't talk about immigration because there's a good chance that this government has already controlled it. It could already be at the tens of thousands. If you strip away students and the Hong Kong Chinese and other asylum seekers, it's already at the tens of thousands. But this is a problem if you're a party that wants to frame politics in terms of migrants versus natives. So what do you do? And we've now got the answer. Reform intends to split British citizenship into two categories. Those who are British-born and deserve the full sort of gamut of privileges, and those who are not British-born.
So British-born, that is the key
That's what they're
phrase
saying
here.
right now. But let's remember Boris Johnson wasn't British-born. So, they might have to change that. But right now, they're saying that council housing should go priority to British-born people, not to foreign-born citizens. So, previously we only knew two categories, immigrant and not, citizen and not. You could certainly say, and the government does, an immigrant should have no recourse to public funds. That's the phrase that's used. So they can't claim benefits, etc. But when you've got your passport, you're treated the same as everybody else. Now, Reform will say, no, that's not how it's going to be, because if you look at the way council houses are awarded, they're awarded in a hierarchy of need. And who comes top of the hierarchy? Women of large families. Now, if you look at who's got the largest families, Somalians score very high. As a result, something like 70% of Somalians in Britain were in social housing at the time of the last census. So there's no doubt about it, but the way council housing is allocated does tend to favour migrant groups because migrant groups tend to have larger families and be more in the category of social housing need. Now, one way of doing it is to change social housing need and to say, okay, we're going to look at how many years have you paid into the system. But no, Reform is coming up with citizenship, saying a citizen who is not British-born is in a lower class citizenship and therefore will not qualify for this. Now, I'll tell you why I think it's important, because it gives a narrative which survives immigration being under control. We can say, no, it's not about immigration, it's about those already here. And it's not even about foreign nationals versus UK nationals. That was the distinction they made in the welfare reform last year. It's about UK nationals who recently got their passport and those who were born entitled to it. There is a significant public support for this, by the way. I don't want to diminish this as a crazy idea, but it is difficult. I mean, even in America, once you've got an American passport, you are as an American as anybody else. So this is difficult territory. It's new territory. But I do wonder if the Conservatives might end up doing something similar. A few days ago, we had Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, making a video outside London social housing saying, we've discovered a place where 75% of the social housing occupants are immigrants. Now, what he didn't say was that something like 80% of them were actually UK nationals. These are naturalised immigrants. These are integrated ones. But he also chose the most immigrant-heavy part of London. Now, on social media, I pointed this out, and he was saying, this shows another problem here, that perhaps we gave away citizenship too easily. He then edited the tweet later on to take away we, referring to Conservatives, to saying perhaps citizenship was given away too easily. But that is the point Reform is making. If citizenship was given away too easily, by Chris Philp's telling and by Reform UK's telling, then what are you going to do about it? So the Tories might be next in saying that those who were given their citizenship in previous years were given it too quickly, too easily, and should have their privileges now retrospectively revoked.
I mean, that also talks to how congested it is on the right now in terms of the battle for space, the battle for ideas, and the battle for public attention. You've got the Tories and Reform is basically, the latest YouGov poll has them almost within margin of error of each other for the first time in quite a while. So it's not quite a level playing field. Reform are ahead, but it's much closer than it has been for a long time. And there is a risk that it leads to a kind of arms race in who can do the most draconian hardline policy. We already see that with Rupert Lowe and Restore, who've got far harder policies than Reform. So it's how far are the different parties willing to go? Where are they going to draw their lines?
I think this is fascinating territory right now, because there is a sense that the old gatekeepers, as it were, traditional media, are now out of the game. If you look at the top 10 news sources, it's all social media or broadcasters. And if social media is now saying things like, is Rishi Sunak even English? That kind of stuff. That debate is now mainstream on social media. So if that kind of Overton window has been smashed, and you can now talk about, let's deny social housing to immigrants who have got UK citizenship, then perhaps there will be a constituency there. So what's happening here is we're seeing the right explore this territory. Perhaps it's now permissible to say stuff that the papers would tell you off for. Perhaps it is now time to see how far we can go in ethno-nationalism. There's a phrase, a meme called UK, Y-O-O-K-A-Y, which is a derogatory term effectively for non-white Brits. Now, is it okay to use this term? We're now seeing Tory MPs use this term. Can we dabble in this waters to show that we're experimenting in cultural politics, as it were? Are there more votes to be found here? Now, of course, you've got Rupert Lowe as the most hardline here, if you take away Tommy Robinson. So Rupert Lowe is saying all sorts of things, ban kosher meat as well as halal. And in the Makerfield by-election, you saw Reform face a dilemma. How much do we dare chase Restore UK and Rupert Lowe here? And by the end of Makerfield by-election, you had Robert Jenrick, I think, literally endorsing the death sentence. Now, I'm not sure that did them many favours. There was a feeling there that they'd gone a bit too far, and they'd managed to galvanise an anti-reform tactical vote. So this is the great dilemma. Is it possible to explore new territory? Is it possible to split British citizens between the native, the true-born, and the kind of foreign-born? And will that be acceptable territory? And if so, how far do we dare go? And I think we can keep seeing these experiments. You'll do a policy here, a tweet there, you'll get a Tory video here and there, just seeing if there is any kind of reaction. How far dare we go? Is there resonance? And where is the new dividing line going to be drawn? And the closer they are in the polls, and isn't it an amazing situation to see these three parties, all broadly speaking within the margin of error? It just goes to show you that British politics is still thrillingly unpredictable. Anything could happen in the next year or so. And I think a lot of them will be exploring these new policies to see if they can find support which has hitherto eluded them.